think your viewers would be interested first in understanding what Islamism is and what is an Islamist. I think definitions are really important because they help shape our understanding of what we're talking about. So Islamism essentially is the political idea that the religion of Islam has a role to play, not just in the private sphere, but also in the public one. And it's essentially political Islam. It's not exactly political Islam, but it essentially is political Islam. So Islam becomes a political instrument to be used in public. Now, in regards to the private, when we talk about the role Islam plays in private, this of course concerns Muslims, primarily Muslims. It doesn't concern anyone else. So, you know, as a Muslim myself, I pray 5 times a day. That's a condition that's placed on me by my faith. So I follow that faith. I'm a devout Muslim. That's fine, not a problem. But when we consider the public sphere and the role religion plays in the public, we're now examining how it results in or applies pressure to non-Muslims. So kafirs. Kafir is the Arabic term for non-Muslim or non-believer, and how that then plays in democracies such as the West, or even in Bharat, in India. So that's what we're thinking about here. And a person who subscribes to this political ideology of Islamism is known as an Islamist. And an Islamist will have made the conscious decision of political affirmation to the political idea that religion should play a role in public life. And when we think about Islamists, and I think your viewers would be very interested to know this, is that there are 3 types of Islamists. It's not a homogenous block. They don't, there is some diversity in it. And even within the groups that I do talk about now, there's still a bit more diversity in it, but we don't have a lot of time to go through all of that. So I will give it, let your viewers into who these groups are. So there are 3 types of groups. There are the violent Islamists, there are the non-violent Islamists, and there are the participationist Islamists. Now, of course, your viewers know very well, not all Muslims are Islamists, but all Islamists are essentially Muslims. Okay, so now the violent Islamists are those who we would consider the Islamist jihadis, the terrorists, the ones who carry out violence in the name of Islam, in the name of their political ideology of Islamism, to further the aim of the revival of Islam within life and the whole world. They want to set up a Sharia ruled by a calendar ruled by Sharia. Then you got the non-violentists who share the same aims, but they don't carry out the violence. Okay, so they might do it through politics, or through the mosque, or through their own groups, and so on and so forth. And then, interestingly, you've got the participationist Islamists. Now, these guys are essentially the ones who use the machinery of democracy, use policies, use law as a way to do this. So they don't engage in violence. They don't necessarily want a caliphate ruled under Sharia. What they do want, though, is to get places to be Sharia compliant as much as possible. So what I mean by that is that secular spaces like schools, they want to be able to implement hijab, not just for Muslims, but if you ask them, they would want everyone else to be wearing it, because they would use this very same secular laws that apply to them, everyone else. That if we have to abide by a uniform code, then why can't you abide by our uniform code? So if, for example, they set up an Islamic school and a non-Muslim joins, they will expect them to also wear the hijab. So they will actually mirror what's going on in secular states such as Bharat, or in the West, and adopt those things. And that's one of the ways for them to Islamicize society. But it's not just that. They also use the laws against you. So they will use minority rights as a way to show their dominance, in other words. So they'll say, look, the hijab is our right to wear, and if you prevent us from wearing it, then you are discriminating us against, against us because we are Muslims. So they attach that same thing. Yet what you don't see necessarily is the same happening with some other religious groups, such as Christians or Jews, particularly in the West, because what they do is they want to present, again, and I go back to this point, they want to present themselves as being under attack, because unless they feel under attack, then they've got no other reason to exist. When we look at the West, for example, the West, we have freedom of speech, we have freedom of religion. You can say what you want, you can believe what you want, and you can also not say what you want and not believe anything you want. You can, almost be whatever you want to be, as long as it's within the law. But that's a problem for Islamists. And one of the ways that they do this, and this is probably quite relevant to some of your viewers in Bharat, is blasphemy laws. So in the West, we don't have blasphemy laws, but in Middle Eastern countries, there is some respect that is afforded to religions, and that's just through the culture that you have. But you do have freedom of speech essentially in a lot of these countries. But in 2008, in the UK, we repealed the blasphemy laws. We no longer have those blasphemy laws. So you can say essentially anything you want about a religion, and no one can actually stop you from doing that. But that's a problem for Islamists because, in my view, they are snowflakes. You say anything about Islam, you say anything about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, anything like that, anything derogatory, then they're up in arms, they're out there screaming and shouting, protesting, and they're also using violence. There was recently Batley Grammar School, a school for gifted and talented students who would have passed an exam to get to school in the North Yorkshire town of Batley. A teacher there had shown a caricature, a picture of the Prophet Muhammad, and he was subsequently, a student had subsequently told elders of this. And as a result, there were lots of protests then taking place outside of the school. A lot of these protests were very intimidating. On social media, we saw lots of people also saying intimidating things. There were also threats that we saw against this teacher. And this teacher had to go into hiding as a result of showing a picture of the Prophet Muhammad. So let me just put that into context. A teacher had to go into hiding because he had showed a picture of the Prophet Muhammad. Now, this is very bizarre in Western democracies where we have free speech. Now, the question was, how are Islamists using the tools of democracy? Well, in this case, they weren't using the tools of democracy, not per se. Well, they were, first of all, protesting, which they're allowed to do so they don't break the law, but they're not allowed to threaten people. This teacher didn't go into hiding because he wasn't scared. He went into hiding because he was scared. He was frightened for his life, and he's still in hiding almost 2 years later. Now, the reason why he's in hiding is because an Islamic charity had actually published his name. So nobody knew who he was until this Islamic charity had published his name. And they published his name. He's gone into hiding. No one said anything about it. The political elite here was silent on it. The Islamists were gaining traction. They were gaining strength as a result of this. No one was doing anything about it. And he's still in hiding. And this is really, really bizarre, because you would expect that given that we have freedom of speech here and you are allowed to show the Prophet Muhammad, and remember, I say this as a Muslim, a devout Muslim, you can do that. So what? If you're going to get offended by people who object to your religion, then there's something, in my view, there's something really wrong with you. But that was happening, and no one was standing up to it. And what they did essentially is that they made that school Sharia compliant, because now that school will never ever show a picture of the Prophet Muhammad. They will never say anything derogatory about Islam when you're allowed to do both of them. And it's not just that school. Other schools are going to be following the same suit. They will be doing the same thing. They will not be talking or challenging beliefs within Islam. They will not be challenging terrorist attacks that are carried out by Muslims who are Islamists, because if they do, then they could be accused of Islamophobia. They could be at threat or, being threatened by some of these Islamists that, if you do this, then, who knows what could happen to them. So these are the sorts of things or the tactics that these Islamists do. And I think, in fact, when you look at Bharat, for example, there are slogans like Sar Tan Se Juda, which means, to chop off the head, to decapitate the head from the body if someone insults the Prophet or insults Islam or anything like that. And this is quite mad, because when you think about it, where are the government in India, and why aren't they pushing back against these Islamists? And I am critical of the government in India, because they should be cracking down on these Islamists, and they shouldn't be not doing it because they can't manage the fallout of it. They should be doing it because they should be able to manage the fallout of it. And if they can't manage the fallout of it, then you're ceding ground to the Islamists. They're getting stronger because they know, actually, do you know what, the let's say the BJP-led government aren't doing anything about it. I think only a few months ago, a tailor was, hacked to death by two Islamists. Because he had shown support to a politician who had said something, or not even a politician, I think it was just a spokesperson, who had said something that lots of Islamists found, objectionable. And this is quite crazy. This is the situation that we're in, that Islamists are essentially running the roost, and the political elite aren't seemingly able to do anything about it.
Absolutely, Wasiq. I think, you'd be shocked to know that there were actually more people after that who were killed for the same reason. It's just that this one case was all over in the news because the killers actually took a video of this. But then for the same reason, you had others also being killed. And this is a big problem in India because, one is, of course, like you mentioned, dominating public spaces that Islamists do. But you also have a section of Islamists who, like you said, are violent, and they would go to any extent to enforce this. And in India, even if the law is sort of equal, sometimes it isn't. It's skewed towards Islamists. But even if it were equal, there is still this thing that we call in India as the street veto, that Islamists have a veto on the street, which nobody else can match, and that's not a level playing field, right? And like you mentioned, we see this all around us, because even in the movie industry in India, you are allowed to show certain religions in a particular way, but you're not allowed to make fun of, let's say, Islam, and that's also applicable for stand-up comedians, a whole range of things, right? So it's a very interesting point, and I think something that is worth thinking about why this happens and why there is a lopsided sort of an approach that there is to this issue.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.